Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to our first webinar as the Pharmaceutical Regulatory Affairs Association of Zimbabwe. So we're known as PRAAZ. So if everyone can just put their microphones on mute and also then just allow the speakers to speak. So today's our webinar. It should be 1 hour long. So first of all, the program outline is that we have opening remarks from myself, which is Nyasha Bandason. Then we have a PRAAZ presentation, which will be done by Mrs. Vimbai Mukakati. It should be about 5 minutes. Then after that, we have our first presentation, which is regarding Zazibona updates with Mr. Farai Masekela. So he'll unpack his topic and let us know a bit more about that. Then after that, we have a second presentation that will be 15 minutes from Mr. Brilliant Samunda, where he'll be speaking about common deficiencies in generic dossier submissions. After that, we'll open up the floor to have a Q&A session and a bit of a discussion. Then we'll open it up to just having a few closing remarks. So that's the program outline. And if there are any questions that also some people want to ask, you can also type some in the chat box. All right, so we'll start off with the first speaker, which is Mrs. Vimbai Mukakati. I hope you can come up and start your presentation. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Nyasha. My name is Vimbai Mukakati. I'm just going to present to you just a few things about PRAAZ so that we all get to know what PRAAZ is and what PRAAZ is all about. I'm just trying to share my screen right now, so please do let me know once you can see it. Yeah. Okay, I'll assume that you can all see my screen. May I kindly ask that those who are speaking with microphones that have not been muted, kindly mute your mics so that we can proceed and everyone can hear clearly. So PRAAZ is a pharmaceutical regulator. Pardon? Okay, I'll continue. PRAAZ is the Pharmaceutical Regulatory Affairs Association of Zimbabwe. So there might be questions because we've got so many pharmaceutical associations out there, why it was necessary to have something called PRAAZ. If you look at the regulatory landscape in Zimbabwe, there are so many changes that are going on. These are affecting everyone along the pharmaceutical value chain. And in most cases, you find that when there are calls to comment on legislation, very few take up that opportunity. But yet there are so many things that could be better with the regulatory landscape. So because of that, it became necessary to have an association that focuses particularly on the regulatory landscape, and also because there have been so many missed opportunities where our regulators will come to us, will come to the professions in general and ask what we think of certain pieces of legislation. And in most cases, these things pass us by without having any input from the industry or from the professionals. The third reason is because there was need to promote regulatory affairs as a profession in Zimbabwe. If you look at other jurisdictions, they've got very vibrant regulatory affairs associations, and this sort of helps them to be in touch with the regulatory landscape and also to contribute positively. So because of that, it's important for us as Zimbabwe to actually recognize this as a profession because it does add value to the pharmaceutical value chain. In terms of the objectives of PRAAZ, our objectives are to promote professionalism amongst the pharmaceutical regulatory affairs professionals in Zimbabwe. We also want to provide a means for discussion and exchange of ideas and opinions between members on all matters of mutual interest. We want to safeguard the collective and individual rights, privileges, and interests of all the members of PRAAZ. Then we also want to facilitate communication with regulatory authorities in the pharmaceutical industry on matters affecting the regulation of medicines, medical devices, and any other relevant areas. We also want to make representations to government, provincial, municipal, and or public bodies in regard to matters of national interest and the welfare of PRAAZ members. We want to institute, support, or obtain any order, ruling, or legislation to enable the association to carry any of its objects into effect of any purpose which may seem expedient, and to oppose any proceedings, applications, rulings, or legislation which may seem calculated directly or indirectly to prejudice the association's interests. Then we also want to arrange informative meetings, trainings, and workshops, such as the one we are having today, with our key stakeholders in order to promote the development of professionalism in the regulatory field. We want to formulate and maintain a code of conduct for the purpose of creating and promoting a high standard of trade practice and professionalism among our members. We also want to establish liaison and to cooperate with any other organized body or bodies, associations, or institutions that have objects or interests similar in whole or in part to those of this association. We would also want to raise funds through subscriptions, levies, or otherwise from members for the carrying out of the objects of the association. So some may be curious to know, how do you become a member of PRAAZ? Membership is open to anyone who's in the pharmaceutical sector with an interest in regulation. Anyone along the pharmaceutical value chain can be a member of PRAAZ. Then once you decide that you want to be a member of PRAAZ, you complete the online application form, which is available from the PRAAZ website. Your application will be reviewed and you then become a member of the association. So some of the benefits that accrue to members of PRAAZ: you get to contribute to the success of this volunteer organization by sharing knowledge, striving for excellence in regulatory affairs, and being part of a community of experts in the field of regulation of medicines and medical devices. There are also reduced rates for recognized regulatory affairs programs, trainings, and workshops. You also get access to a network of professionals in regulatory affairs and affiliates in local associations. If you just look at some of the comments that come up in some of our interactions as professionals, you realize that there's a knowledge gap in terms of regulatory affairs. So being part of this association will help you to tap into the expertise offered by some professionals who may be experts in a particular area. If you remember earlier when I was talking about eligibility for membership, I did say that anyone can be a member from any stage of the pharmaceutical value chain. So you will find retailers, you will find wholesalers, industry people, regulators, and so forth within the association. So you are then able to tap into the expertise offered by this various network of professionals. Then you will also get the consultations from key stakeholders in regulatory affairs. You'll have access to a resource directory.
Sorry, Vimbai. Sorry, Vimbai.
Yes.
But may you please put your screen on full screen, because I think it's frozen on the first slide. Sorry, I didn't mean to interject. Thanks.
Okay, it's fine. Okay, we were now talking about member benefits, so I hope we are all on the same slide. I was saying you also get access to a resource directory of people who can help you in terms of regulatory affairs issues, and you also get access to the quarterly bulletin by PRAAZ. In a nutshell, this is what PRAAZ is all about. This is what PRAAZ offers its members at this point in time. So without further ado, I will hand back to Nyasha so that we move on to the next presentation. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much, Vimbai, for that lovely presentation where you just really unpacked everything about PRAAZ and where we are and what we want to achieve. So for everyone, you can also look at our website and you get more information there. All right. Thank you so much, Vimbai. So now we move on to our first presentation. We'll be getting some of the Zazibona updates from Mr. Farai Masekela. So his bio is that Farai is the assessments coordinator for the Zazibona collaboration, and he's also the head of evaluations and registration at MCAZ. So Farai joined the MCAZ in 2011, and he has been involved in regulatory affairs for over 11 years. He's been involved with the Zazibona collaboration since its inception in 2013. Farai has also coordinated the Zazibona assessment activities since 2015. So Farai, you can just come up and present. Thank you.
Okay, Nyasha, thank you very much. So let me try to share my screen so that I start the presentation.
All right, thanks, Farai. And can people put their microphones on mute so that we can also clearly hear the speaker? Thank you.
Okay, just a minute more. I think there's something happening here, but let me just try to share so that I start the presentation.
All right, no, that's okay. Perhaps for now, we can open it up to the floor for perhaps one question for Vimbai, and then while we're waiting for Farai to load his presentation. All right, Vimbai, there's a question that is in the chat box if you'd want to answer it. So it says, how much is the membership fee? I might have missed that part from Ngoni.
Thank you very much, Nyasha. At present, there is no membership fee up until December, if I'm not mistaken. Afterwards, it would have to be an agreement between members on how much membership fee would be charged.
All right, thanks, Vimbai. Yeah, so I think people carry on checking. So by next year, we should have, I think, a clear fee note. Thank you. Farai, are you almost ready?
Yes, I think
great.
it's coming up. Can you see it now?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can see that. So please make it full screen so that we can also clearly see the slides. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So let me try to do that. Now it's gone again. Okay, let me do it again. Yeah, I'm not sure what's happening in the initial meeting of PRAAZ.
No, that's okay. I should have got the presentation then.
Yes.
But our technology, okay, I'm sure it'll be sorted out just now. You can just try again. If it's a challenge, perhaps should we go to Brilliant's presentation and then come back to yours?
Yeah, probably. I think let's do that.
All right, it's fine. Brilliant, are you ready with your presentation?
Nyasha, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you nice and clear.
All right, let me try to share.
Okay, can you share your presentation and while I just give your introduction? Sorry about that, everyone. All right, so perhaps we'll just move up to the second presentation, I think, while Farai is trying to sort out his side. So we've got Mr. Brilliant Samunda, who will be talking about common deficiencies in generic dossier submissions. So Brilliant Samunda is a RAC certified regulatory pharmacist who has been working for the Medicines Control Authority of Zimbabwe since 2016 in the Evaluations and Registrations Division. He's currently pursuing a master's in biotechnology, innovation and regulatory sciences with Purdue University. He's also an ED, CTP, MCAZ Regulatory Science Fellow. So welcome, Brilliant. You can go ahead with your presentation. Thanks.
Thank you, Nyasha. Confirm you can see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen. Yeah.
Okay. So good evening good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I've been introduced. I shall be presenting on common deficiencies in generic medicines, application for registrations. So this presentation is more of a summary on a paper that we have written, and we are hoping that by the end of the year, the paper will be published, where we were looking at common deficiencies that were observed in application, which were finalized between January 2018 to December 2020. So the overview of my presentation, I shall talk a bit about the MCAZ submission process, then dive into the deficiencies of that were observed in API and FPPs. So some of the acronyms that I'm going to be using, I'll focus on the API. So API is an active pharmaceutical ingredient. The FPP is a finished pharmaceutical product. Some they refer the API as the drug substance, some they refer the FPP as the drug product. So some of you might be asking yourself this question: what does regulatory authorities such as MCAZ expect when you're submitting your application for registration? The answer is very simple. Regulatory authorities require complete application with correct and acceptable information. So these are some of the requirements, some of the information that is required when you're submitting an application for registration to MCAZ. Number one, your application should include a completed and signed quotation confirmation form, an MCAZ invoice, a full and completed MC8 form, then a dossier of supporting document in format and presentation acceptable according to the guidelines which are on the website. Then in addition to this, you're expected to include samples for the pharmaceutical product that you wish to register with the MCAZ. So upon receipt of the application, before they go through the review process, these applications, they are subjected to screening, where the assessors will be looking for the completeness of the dossier. So hello, sorry, can you hear me? Nyasha, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. You can continue.
Okay, sorry.
Yes, we can hear.
So sorry about that. So upon the submission of application goes through screening, and we'll be looking at the completeness of the dossier. And we'll be hoping that all the applications that are submitted to MCAZ, they are complete and they're in full. And it will be unfortunate for an application to be given an intent to refuse to register just after screening, because whenever you want to resubmit the information that MCAZ would have requested you to submit, you have to pay an additional fee. So we expect applicants, before they make their submission, to go through the guidelines and MCAZ page to see what information is required by MCAZ. So the triangle that is projected is showing us the modules that are a summary, or the modules that are included in a dossier, information from modules that are included in the dossier. So we have got module 1 to module 5, but today, because of time, we're just going to be focusing on module 3, which talks about the quality part of the dossier. So module 3, this is just more like a list of information that is expected to be in module 3. So the module 3, we can divide it into 2. We have got the S section, which starts from S1 to S7. Then we have got the P section, which starts from P1 to P8. The S section is the section which includes information to do with the drug substance or the API. Then the P section is the one with information for the FPP or the drug product. So currently we have got 2 ways in which you can submit API information. The first option is full API information. So the full details of the chemistry, manufacturing process, process controls, and process validation of the API are supposed to be included in the dossier. Then the other option is the CEP. So this only applies to APIs with which are either European pharmacopoeia. So APIs with CEPs would have been assessed by the EDQM. And when you submit an API information with a CEP, you are not expected to submit all the information that is required for the full API. There are certain sections that are highlighted in the CTD that you're supposed to submit. So this one, we rarely find deficiencies or issues with APIs that are submitted together with APIs with CEPs. So regarding the FPP information, so it's obvious that formulation, so the information that is required for the FPP or drug products, it depends on the nature and the type of formulation that you'll be dealing with. And it's obvious that for advanced formulation, such as sterile products, you expect more information compared to simple formulation, such as instant release, immediate release tablets. So in our paper, when you looked at the common deficiencies that were observed for those applications that we analyzed that we finalized between 2018 and 2020, we came up with the top 5 deficiencies for the API section and the FPP section. And I'll just go through. For the API, more issues were observed under the S4 section, which has to do with specification of the API, then followed by the description of the manufacturing process of the API, which is followed by the stability of the API, characterization of the API, and lastly, control of impurities. There were other deficiencies which were observed, but we just decided to focus on the top 5. Then moving on to the FPP section, again, specifications and control of the FPP. More issues were observed under this section, followed by the stability of the FPP, then pharmaceutical development, manufacturing process and process controls, then lastly, process validation. So we also looked at other agencies comparing to see how much we differed from other agencies. So what we have observed is that even though the trend was not exactly the same, but the deficiencies that were observed in our top 5 was more or less the same as those that were observed in the top 5 for other agencies such as SAPRA, the EDQM, WHO for the API, then for the FPP, EMA, and WHO as well, together with SAPRA. So now just looking at the deficiencies maybe in depth. So I'll just follow the CTG sequence. So for issues that were observed under the manufacturing process of the API, some of the issues include manufacturing process not being well described, use of recovery solvents not stated or not well justified, information on the reprocessing and reworking not provided, then the starting material proposed not justified or being unacceptable. Then moving on to the characterization, section 3.2.S.3.1. So for some APIs where literature or where there's evidence that the APIs show polymorphism, some of the issues that we noted was that applicants, the information on potential formation of polymorphism would not be provided. Then for poorly soluble molecules, some applicants would not provide information on PSD, which is particle size distribution for the biobatch. Then moving on to impurities, insufficient discussion on impurities, then no discussion on potential genotoxic impurity, and control strategy for these impurities not being well justified. Then there are some impurities of concern, such as benzene and nitrosamine. So you'd see that we have applicant who uses, for benzene, who uses solvents where benzene is a potential contaminant. So some applicant would not even give a discussion on benzene or provide any justification for the omission of control for benzene under API specifications. Then for nitrosamine, this is a topical issue. For the statins, some applicants would not have included discussion on nitrosamine and other molecules which are known to have potential formation for nitrosamine. Then under the API specifications, so you'd see that some of the specification provided would have unjustified acceptance criteria or unacceptable acceptance criteria, unjustified omission of critical parameters such as related substance, test for related substance, identification, and particle size distribution for poorly soluble molecules. Then regarding method validation, some applicants would not submit information on method validation, especially the FPP manufacturers. Then lastly, stability. So you'd see that some of the issues that were observed under stability included information which was not adequate to support the proposed retest period. Some applicants would not propose the storage conditions, and some would propose storage conditions which are not acceptable. Then moving on to deficiencies observed for finished products. So I'll start with the specification or control of the FPP. The reasons are more or less the same as those highlighted under the API. So you'd see that some of the applicant would just omit critical parameters, such as related substance and even sterility for sterile products and microbial tests. Then unacceptable acceptance criteria, method validation data missing, and failure to demonstrate stability indicating nature of related substance. This will be under the method validation, analytical method validation, sorry. Then regarding the manufacturing process controls and validation. So there would be missing executed and blank BMRs, inadequate description of the equipment, process parameters, and endpoint determination. And just to mention this one, which is commonly found in products which are manufactured via wet granulation. The majority of applicants would not characterize the endpoint of the granulation endpoint. Then the other thing was inadequate description of sterilization process for sterile products. Then unsatisfactory in-process tests and testing frequencies, missing process validation protocols and reports, and inadequate validation data for sterilization method. Then with regards to pharmaceutical development, so you'd see that information with regards to API compatibility for fixed dose combination, or API excipient compatibility would be missing or inadequate. Insufficient information on selection and optimization of the formulation and process parameters, missing or incomplete comparative dissolution profile data. This applies to oral dosage forms, oral solid dosage forms, and even suspensions. Then failure to demonstrate the discriminatory nature of the proposed dissolution methods, inadequate data on qualification of proposed container closure, and absence of justification and supporting data for overages and score lines. Then lastly, on stability. So you'd see that some of the application would have inadequate number of months, because ideally in the CTD guideline, there are minimum number of months that are expected to be submitted before a product is registered. So some applicants would not submit adequate data with adequate number of months. Then inadequate batches. Then failure to include critical stability indicating parameters such as related substance and dissolution. Then inappropriate testing frequencies. So the ICH and even WHO, it states or the testing frequency that is supposed to be followed by applicants. So you'd see that in some applications, applicants would just come up with their own testing frequency, which is not in line with the stipulated testing frequency. Then moving on to the recommendations. So we're recommending applicants to familiarize themselves with MCAZ guidelines or any other regulator where you wish to submit your application for registration. The applicants should make use of pre-submission meetings and in-process meetings. So whenever you are not, you have got gray areas that you'd want the authority to clarify, you can always organize a request for a meeting, and I know that the regulator will be willing to assist. Then due diligence on API sources. Then also, we encourage applicants to engage GMP compliant manufacturers, both the API and the FPP manufacturer. Then lastly, we encourage applicants to submit applications that are supported by appropriate and relevant clinical and non-clinical studies. That brings the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you so much, Brilliant, I think, for that wonderful and insightful presentation. And I'm sure everyone learned also quite a lot in terms of the work that you're doing when it comes to quality checks on the finished pharmaceutical products. So we'll just have a section later where we'll come back to you and ask some questions. So if you can please stay on for the rest of the webinar so that people can ask questions. Is that okay, Brilliant?
Yes, Nyasha, it's fine.
All right, great. All right, thanks so much, everyone, I think, for still being on the meeting. We've now got at least 76 participants who are here, so it's quite nice. So next up, in terms of our presentation, we have Mr. Farai Masekela. So as I've mentioned earlier on, he's the Zazibona Assessments Coordinator, and today he's going to be giving us some updates with regards to Zazibona collaboration. So Farai, I hope you're ready now.
Yes, I am, Nyasha. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks a lot. You can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to talk briefly about Zazibona. I think 15 minutes will not be enough if someone does not know anything about Zazibona, but I think there will be enough for someone to be able to familiarize with what Zazibona is all about. And so Zazibona is a collaboration. Basically, it's the SADC Medicines Registration Harmonization. And it started in 2013. So let me try to just move my slides there. Okay, thank you. So as you can see, Zazibona was started by those 4 countries, the Zambia, Zimbabwe, Botswana, and Namibia. And from there, the name was also derived from the first 4 countries which started Zazibona in October 2013. And basically the logic for starting Zazibona was that those 4 countries had the same challenges as far as regulatory matters are concerned in the NMRAs, which is the National Medicines Regulatory Authorities. So there were issues of huge backlogs, there's high staff turnover, there was limited capacity to assess certain types of products. So this included things like vaccines in some of the agencies that are involved in the Zazibona. Then across the board, there is also an issue to do with inadequate financial resources. I think this applies to literally almost all regulatory authorities, whether you're talking about the smallest country or you're talking about the USFDA. These issues apply to everyone. And so currently from the 4 countries which started Zazibona, it has now grown to 14 countries, of which 9 are active and 5 are non-active. So the active countries are those countries which have the capacity to actually do assessments, which is the evaluation of dossiers that we do, as well as the inspection activities, that is doing GMP inspections. Then the non-active countries, which are those 5 on your right, are the ones which they can benefit and use Zazibona decisions in their own procurement decisions, but they do not have the capacity to actually conduct assessments or inspection activities. So Zazibona was essentially formed based on a memorandum of agreement by the heads of agencies of the participating countries. This was in 2013. Then in November 2014, it was adopted as a SADC project. And from there, other countries could join to add to the 4. Then again, like I mentioned earlier, that whether a country is an observer or an active member is determined solely by the ability of the country to contribute towards assessments and inspections. Then from the beginning, from 2013 up to 2022, Zazibona was only focused on human allopathic medicines. So it did not include any discussions on complementary medicines or medical devices or vet medicines, etc. But as of 2022, there's a veterinary product Zazibona being set up. So the initial stages have already been done, and there's been an expression of interest which has already been published on the websites of the participating countries that I mentioned earlier. So for those who are interested in the veterinary side of Zazibona, you will see the expression of interest, and it will be run slightly differently because they will have a window where they accept applications, then they close that window and continue on like that. Then the objectives of Zazibona, I think these are similar to the objectives of most of the collaborative efforts being done in the regulatory space. Basically, it's one of the major things being to reduce the workload, and the other thing is also, again, to try and facilitate harmonization of regulatory requirements among those other ones which are on the slide. So I think in as far as harmonization of regulatory requirements is concerned, some people were in the meeting here have already participated in the efforts to try and harmonize the labeling requirements in the SADC region. That work is still ongoing, and there's still a lot of work to be done, though there might be some aspects which are closer to being implemented than others. Then in terms of the process itself, for applicants who are interested in submitting dossiers via Zazibona, a manufacturer would submit an application to at least 2 eligible countries where they're interested in marketing the product. And part of that submission entails payment of manufacturing fees, submission of a dossier, etc. Then from the regulator's side, what we do is we have a system where we have one country doing the primary review and another country doing the secondary review, then WHO doing the quality assurance of the reports that would have been generated. But ultimately, the decisions that are recommended at Zazibona, so whether rejection, whether approval, have to be implemented in the countries individually. So for instance, if it's in Zimbabwe, if a product has gotten a recommendation to approve in Zimbabwe, then it has to be taken to the registration committee for them to actually adopt that decision in line with the laws of the country. So this applies again to all the other countries where you would be interested in marketing a product. In terms of the dossier itself, it has to be submitted in the SADC CTD format. So you find that the only difference would then be module 1, which is specific in the different countries. And in terms of the other requirements of dossier submission, like product samples, again, these are not harmonized, and you would have to follow the requirements of the specific countries where you intend to submit an application. Then again, in terms of the dossier format itself, if you are submitting, for example, to South Africa, you'd have to submit a dossier via their ECTD portal. If you're submitting to Zimbabwe, for instance, you'd have to submit a hard copy module 1 as well as a soft copy of the rest of the dossier. Again, this is in line with the country-specific requirements on the submission, though the technical requirements from module 2 to module 5 should be the same, in line with the SADC CTD guideline. So then there's also the aspect of inspection. Inspections are only conducted for products, for sites which have submitted products for assessment under the Zazibona collaboration. And a GMP inspection is only initiated after a dossier has been submitted and evaluation has already taken place. So what you will find is, in terms of the inspection, unlike the assessments where the dossiers are submitted to the different countries, an inspection, there's only one inspection that is conducted, and there's only one inspection fee that is paid. And this inspection covers all the countries where an application would have been submitted. And there's also the aspect of desk reviews. So some sites can be eligible for desk review. Again, this is dependent on who else has inspected the site before, how long it has been since that inspection, and it will only be the inspections which are accepted by the Zazibona Inspectorate, which are recognized rather, are those which are done by PICS countries as well as ICH countries. And again, if a report is submitted to the an inspection report is submitted to the Zazibona Inspectorate, and they then decide whether or not they can accept to do a desk review. So just the process itself involves submission of those common products. I've already described this. And the output of what we do is a consolidated assessment report. So this assessment report includes queries which have been agreed upon by everyone in a joint assessment session. Then there's a consolidated list of queries, which is then sent to the applicant. And this consolidated list of queries is sent together with the country-specific queries, which in this case would be those which are in module 1. So for instance, if you submit a dossier and you submit to Mozambique and you don't have Portuguese labels, Mozambique will then request for those labels to be submitted in Portuguese, in addition to the technical queries which they also share. So the technical queries will be the same across the board. So to date, what we have managed is 360 days from the time we first review a product to the time we give a recommendation. So this is inclusive, this is both the regulator's time and the manufacturer's time. That's the timeline that we've managed. And so far, what we have done is 38 assessment sessions. Of the 38, 26 were physical assessment sessions, the last of which was in February 2020 rather. And the other 12 from then on have been virtual assessment sessions. Then 48 manufacturers have been inspected. And from those dossiers that we've, from this work, 340 products have been assessed. And of those 340 products, 56% of them have received a positive recommendation. The other 44% have either had a negative recommendation or have been withdrawn from the Zazibona process, either for not meeting the timelines or for requesting timeline extensions, which the regulators thought were too long, or the manufacturer themselves indicating that they are no longer interested in pursuing the product for commercial reasons. Just a plethora of reasons as to why these products have been withdrawn as well. Then I think the benefits, I think, are quite clear in terms of to the patients. It's basically the aim is to try and improve access to quality assured medicines, which I believe is the goal of everyone in this meeting. Then on the regulators, I think the biggest of this would be the reduced workload, in addition to all those other ones that I've already mentioned there. Then to the manufacturers, I think the biggest one would be the enlarged market access, as well as the reduced regulatory workload, because you're getting common queries from the countries, which you prepare one response, of course, except the module one. Then it seems Zazibona, there are also benefits that in some countries, they say Zazibona has a faster time to registration than the timelines in the countries. I think that's all. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks so much, I think, Farai, for that great presentation. I think there's so much to learn and so much to know. And I think there's plenty of work ahead for everyone. So whether it's the regulatory bodies, whether it's the manufacturers or the market. But yeah, thank you so much again for that presentation and also highlighting some upcoming matters. Okay, so for now, what we will do is that we will go into the question and answer segment. So in the chat box, there's been a couple of questions that have been posted. So perhaps we'll refer to those ones. If anyone also wants to add in some more questions, please write them down again in the chat box and we can refer to them. Okay, so the first question is from Sharon. So brilliant, this question is for you. Where Sharon was asking, do you have publicly available guidance documents that applicants can use to avoid deficient applications? Brilliant.
Yes, yes, we do. So if you go to our website, especially if you are talking about application for guidance for application for registration, you go to MCA's website and look for evaluations in registration. There is well-articulated step-by-step process, and it also includes the guidance documents.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah, Sharon. So there's your answer there. There's another question for you, Brilliant. So this one is from Kando Dube. Sorry, hold on. Let me just mute these other microphones. Mute that one. Right. So, sorry, let me just go back to the question from Tando Dube. It says, in the event that the API manufacturer does not provide all the required information, but the finished pharmaceutical, the FPP manufacturer applicant provides all the documentation required for product registration, will the application still be tabled as intent to refuse? Brilliant, you can answer that.
Yes. So when we are evaluating an application for registration, we look at the dossier as a whole, right? We don't look at it in silos, like separating the API from the FPP, because the API will feed into the FPP. So we need to ascertain the quality of the API, whether or not it's acceptable or not, before we can accept the FPP. So we encourage applicants or manufacturers to engage with reliable API sources.
Right. Thank you so much, Brilliant, for that answer. And sorry, just another one, a quick follow-up, I think, to that question is that, can you publish a list of GMP compliant API manufacturers?
On that one, I think there are GMP experts here, but currently we don't have a database for GMP. We are not inspecting API manufacturers. Currently, we are just inspecting FPP manufacturers, so we don't have that database.
Maybe Nyasha, maybe just to also assist Brilliant there and
Sure, go ahead.
So the other thing to note is that the APIs that are submitted as part of the FPP submission. So basically, someone submits an application for registration of a product. So all the information in there is essentially confidential. So to then publish the API manufacturers without some level of consent is a bit tricky as well. So where it's possible is where we have a separate process for APIs, for instance. So if we have an API MF process where a manufacturer submits an API and says, I want this API to be approved, for instance, by MCAZ, so that anyone else who wants to use it would then just go to a database and say, this is the API. Because for some manufacturers, I'm sure, either for the sake of competition or what, some will not be willing for us to actually divulge which source they are using. So it's a bit tricky for us to, what we can encourage is there are things like UDRA GMP, the EU one, where they publish API GMP compliant API manufacturers. You can use those. Then WHO also has the CPQ process where they publish the list of manufacturers which are acceptable, and the issues of GMP are also addressed there. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, thank you very much, I think, Farai, for, adding to that answer. And thank you so much, Brilliant, for responding to some of those questions. So Farai, I think a couple of questions are now in your direction. So first of all, there's a question from Linia Mbegegwi. She said, thank you, Farai. Just out of curiosity, how far are we from okay. Sorry, let me just start there. How far are we from seeing this kind of harmonization when it comes to other regulatory functions, such as PV, pharmacovigilance, I think? Thanks. You can go.
All right, thank you, Nyasha. So I think currently what we have, I think like I mentioned, was the work that has been started by the vet guys, Dr. Makonis and all, is the second step. Then the third step is probably going to be variations for products which have been approved via Zazibona. Though this is probably going to be discussed and decided by the heads of agencies in their strategic meeting that they're going to be having sometime this month. So I think they're going to have a 5-year strategic plan, and from there they will see what other functions they would want to include based on the experiences that we've had over the past 8.5 years or so.
Thank you so much, Farai, for that response. So there's another question from T. Ganga. Is there a plan to compile a list of API manufacturers whose DMFs have been evaluated by MCAZ similar to the EU? I think that was answered, right? Farai, would you like to take that?
Yes, I think, Temba, maybe this partly was answered by what I was answering when I was answering the question from Tando. But I think it's something that we would also then again seek legal advice as far as, because like I mentioned earlier, that our concern is that this information that we receive is not received, is received as part of a package which we agree between you as the applicant and us that this information is confidential. So part of the way we use this information is, for instance, because we've assessed an API from a certain manufacturer, for instance, when it's submitted by another company, we do our own internal process where we verify certain things and we do an abridged review. But as far as publishing it, it's something that has to be, I think, where we would have to be guided, because there's that risk of us then publishing something which is confidential, and then probably getting ourselves in a mess as far as the legal issues are concerned.
All right. Yeah, thank you very much, I think, Farai, for that response. And there's another question from Alan. Oh, sorry, it's just moved. Sorry, hold on. There's a question from Alan Kasam Mbaral. He said, I understand MCAZ now requires dossiers for clinicals. Is it acceptable to go with the commitment to place the product later on stability instead of providing the stability results or report with the dossier?
Brilliant. Would you like to take that?
You can take that one, Farai.
Okay, thank you. So, yes, Alan, there is now a requirement to submit dossiers for galenic house. So I'm sure you will note that I think some of the manufacturers that I saw represented here already have approved, they've already registered products like G&I, some betadine ointment. Those are what we are considering as galenic house. In terms of galenic house, the registration requirements definitely are less strict than for normal human products that we approve. So there is, depending on the data that you've already generated, we can discuss on a case-by-case basis whether the data you have is enough for us to say maybe you can generate stability later on, or you can say maybe I've generated stability for 3 months. Can you allow me to market it generated for 6 months, even though the requirement is that at the time of registration for normal products, you should have 12 months stability data. So it's a case of us seeing the data package that you have, as well as your development pipeline, what you've done. Then that allows us to then allow you to either go ahead or not. But again, it's all things that we can actually discuss for these galenic house. So the best is to always seek for a pre-submission meeting if you intend to develop a product or you want to submit something and you're not sure what you should do. So yes, there are some concessions that are made, but again, we have to agree beforehand.
Thank you so much, I think, Farai, for that response. There's a question also from Mr. Botwondemera. He said, thanks for the presentation. What is the cost for Zazibona GMP inspection?
So I think I would have to verify the actual costs, but I think the Zazibona GMP inspections are the fees are slightly higher than the MCZ ones, for example, because of the benefits that you accrue, as well as the need for more inspectors to go on that trip. But the exact figures, I would be lying if I gave them to you, but I can share them with you both after the meeting. I can talk to the inspectors, then find out, and also you then clarify whether it's for OSDs, whether it's sterile products, how many lines they are. Then I can then just give you a guidance that I get from the inspector.
All right, thanks so much, I think, Farai, for that response. So Mr. Ndemira, just, I guess, coordinate with Farai, and you can follow up on that information. All right, so there's the last question here from Mrs. Florence Chingwena. She said, Farai, there are a lot of unregistered medicines from Mozambique finding their way into our community, and some clinics along the border are confronted with demands to administer injectables after client has received first dose in Mozambique. Any chances of working with the Mozambique counterparts to address this? Yeah. All right. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So I think this is, again, something that we can actually do based on our relationship with the colleagues in Mozambique. Because as I mentioned, I think when I started presenting on Zazibona, one of the things that Zazibona has done is to allow us to have relationships with our colleagues in the region, in the different regulatory authorities. So depending on what our inspectors say, I think this is something that they can definitely liaise with our colleagues in Mozambique. And some of the guys from the inspectorate are here, but we're going to formally forward this to them.
They get it for free, so for them, they don't want carry it.
So again, so we are going to formally send this to them so that they also find a way of addressing this, and we then probably get back to you either through PRAAZ or other avenues. Yeah, so I see Sly is there. So Sly has taken note of this, and I'm sure he will be able to work on this and probably give feedback on what can be done as far as this is concerned. Thank you.
All right, yeah, thank you so much, Farai, and thanks for just highlighting the response from Sly. So Mr. Ndemira, you can see the figures there, that the fees are 8,000 US for general OSD per block and 10,000 USD per block sterile formulations. Thanks for that, Sly, and helping respond there. Okay, so I think that's the question round done. We also want to round up our meeting because we did say our webinar would be 1 hour. So we started a bit late, so we'll be rounding up at about 6:05. So we'll be sharing, I think, the slides and the link to, yeah, I think the presentation will be sharing everything, all the information. So you will get that. But thank you so much, everyone. And I think we really appreciate the support as an association. I think this is a very good time to bridge the gap, especially between the regulatory side and industry side. And also perhaps even offer more insights in terms of viable career for some people who are interested also in regulation. People are also interested in understanding a bit more about some of the work that is done there. So I think from me, I will be rounding up. We should have another webinar quite soon. There's been a request to do a lot on the global benchmarking tool. So we'll be engaging the regulatory authority so that we can get a speaker from there to also, I think, share a bit about that. If anyone also has any recommendations or requests, please, I think also feel free to send them through in terms of some of the topics that we should discuss and what people also want to see. So please also register on our website if you want to become a member. And yeah, I think thank you again, everyone, very much. I've posted, the link for that. Okay, thank you, everyone. I'll leave the chat open for a few more minutes so everyone can get the link.
Thank you, Nyasha. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Nyasha. Enjoy your evening, everyone.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think this is a good initiative. Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Thanks, Nyasha. Thank you so much for your hard work.
All right, you're welcome. Thanks for attending. Eh? All right, thank you, everyone. I'm closing the meeting link now.